you're like me, this is probably what you think whenever you see a Grandmaster game.
Just smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave.
So in this video, I'm going to help you out and break down some things you can learn from a miniature game that was played at the 2021 Grand Swiss between two strong Grandmasters. One of the concepts is something I still battle with as an 1800, so hang around to the end of the video to make sure you catch that. Jobava from Georgia had the white pieces, while Moussard from France played black. It was a classical game and it only ended up lasting 14 moves. It's a little facetious, but I'd say the first lesson from this game is not to look at today's top level games when trying to find an opening to play. If you look at the opening moves from this game, you can see it looks a little strange, and some of the opening principles are completely ignored. If you're a beginner, it's far safer sticking to just following the principles of central control, piece development, and king safety. And even as a tournament player, it's good to hold off on some of the dodgy openings until you're good enough to understand exactly when you can violate rules. But let's focus on move 9, where things start to get trickier. White has just captured what looks like a free pawn on d5. The knight can't capture because it is pinned, and if the queen captures, then the knight on e7 is no longer defended. Of course, Grandmasters think further than one move ahead, so Moussard captured the pawn with his queen because after bishop takes e7, rook e8 pins the bishop to the king, and this actually highlights why one opening principle is to castle to get your king out of the center as soon as possible. White went for knight e2 for reasons we'll see later, but the important thing to notice is that you need to re-evaluate the position after your opponent moves, and also think ahead before moving. If you carry on with your initial plan of recapturing the bishop, you end up dropping your queen. An easy solution then looks like you can just trade queens and then capture the bishop. Sadly, this also doesn't work, since you now get back rank mated. Black opted for queen h5, and we'll come back to this later, while white found the move queen to d2, which prepares to get the king out of the center of the board, and it also puts the queen on a square that isn't likely to be attacked, which would lose white some time. Notice that the bishop is still defended because of the back rank mate threats, so Moussard played h6, partly to give the king an escape square, but also to stop the queen or the bishop going to g5. White got his king to safety, black attacked the bishop by developing his knight, and after the move knight to f4, black resigned. The reason for this is that white is up an entire piece, black's queen is being chased around, white's king should be safe, and white can also very easily continue to develop pieces and launch an attack on black's king. At a Grandmaster level, in a classical game, this is resignable, but for most players, I'd say you should still carry on fighting as black, as there's always the chance that your non-Grandmaster opponent will slip up and you can make a comeback. So let's rewind a bit to the move that was called the blunder, which most of us wouldn't have labelled a blunder at all. I initially thought that the point where things went wrong was where black captured the pawn on d5 and couldn't win back the bishop. As it turns out though, if black hadn't played queen h5, he was still better despite being an entire minor piece down. The two moves that keep a slight advantage here for black are queen to e5 and queen to f5. They both have similar lines, so let's just look at what happens after queen to e5. You're now threatening to take the bishop, so white has to move the bishop to hold on to the extra material. Bishop to h4 looks like a logical move because it defends f2, which might be weak in future, and it also defends the d8 square. Black doesn't even have to do anything fancy here. Black can just develop their knight to c6. We can now see why white has quite a few problems that even an extra minor piece can't make up for. White's knight can't move because it's pinned, and if the knight can't move, then the bishop can't move, and we can't castle kingside. If we try fianchetto the bishop, apart from potentially trapping our dark squared bishop on the side of the board, we're also opening up this diagonal to our rook, and after queen to e4, our rook is attacked and we can't castle anyway. An alternative plan then is to try castle queenside, as we saw happening in the game after queen h5 was played. Unfortunately now, queen to e4 attacks our bishop, and after bishop g3, black can play bishop f5, and now black's developed their pieces and is still stopping white from castling because of the mating threat. And now white's even more tied up with their development. Not even a desperate f3 works to get our king to safety because queen to a4 stops us from castling still, as the a2 pawn will fall with renewed mating threats. Remember that this whole time white is still up an entire piece. Compare this to what we saw in the actual game, where white's king is safe and black's still not completely developed, with the queen being chased around, and you can definitely see the difference that the move queen to h5 made. With perfect play, white could still equalize after queen to f5 or queen e5, but I thought this was a good illustration of what is meant by compensation for a piece, and why material isn't always the deciding factor of who's winning a game. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Thank you very much for watching and happy chessing.